welcome everyone. Happy December. And we'll go ahead and get started. I do know of one change to the agenda. We're adding in an action item, G4 and G5 after the closed session for employee negotiations. Or employee contracts, sorry. So that's one change to the agenda. Any other changes? Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Hennon, second by McClellan, to approve the agenda and the following changes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Moving to some future events, please check the district website for a complete list of monthly events. Monday, December 23rd, 2024, through Thursday, January 2nd, no school, DSC and childcare hours listed on the district website. Tuesday, January 14th, school board organizational and regular meeting at 7 p.m. with communication to the board and administration at 6:45. Moving on to consent agenda. Can I get a motion? So moved by Schmidt, second by Forsberg, to approve the following items of the consent agenda. Minutes of the November 12, 2024 regular meeting. Bills paid for October 2024, and the following amounts of $4,858,000, and personnel items. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Moving on to presentation, special guests and recognitions. 2024 budget and property taxes payable 2025 presentation, also known as Truth and Taxation hearing. Ms. Amy Schultz.
Good evening, school board. So once a year, we are required to give this presentation prior to approving our property taxes for those payable in 2025. I will do my best to go through it quickly. This is a lot of repeat information for the school board. Someone like Marilyn has been through decades and decades of these. I think she's the only person who's been at more of these than I've actually presented on. So, so with that, we'll go through it pretty quick, but please feel free to ask questions as we go. So with that, we will start with, property tax law does require us to present a few things tonight. And so with that, we're gonna go through those. And then this is one of those things that we, as a school district, have a few pieces of the property tax law that we have control over. One of those is not how it's calculated. So the Department of Education has 40 pages of formulas. Even for somebody who likes numbers, it's overwhelming and tough to get through. But they go through all of those funding, so it's highly regulated. We are highly dependent on the state for how those work. Statute sets those formulas. So we have the ability to levy less than what those are. Those set the maximum we can do. Often when you do levy less than the maximum, you lose state aid as a component of that as well. So we'll walk through how that looks on a few of these. The second piece, though, is on how it's calculated our property tax values. And so our property values, counties set those. So that is not something done by the school district. County assessors set those values. So that's another piece of that we don't necessarily have control over, but does impact our calculations. So as I mentioned, there's two things we have to present on. That is our current year budget, which I know the board has heard a lot about already, so we will go through that fast. As well as the proposed property tax levy, changes to last year's levy that are significant, and explaining those. Another piece that we need to do along with that is open it up for public comment, and so we will do that at the end as well. So starting with our current year school budget, that's for the 2024-25 year. With that, you can see these are our originally adopted budgets from June. And I know we are proposing that we will bring revisions, and that's something that we will do. I think January is what we're planning on for the time being, but we will have at least one revision coming in after this new year. So you can see our totals by fund, the general fund broken out by operations, capital, and long-term facilities. We like to look at those a little bit differently, knowing the operations are kind of our ongoing day-to-day, and capital are those things that can kind of change year to year based on projects. As well as our other funds, food service, community service, debt, and our other post-employment debt as well. So you can see our total with that, revenues and expenses right around the $128 million. So seeing those in just a graph form, You can see that our general fund makes up the majority of our revenues, as well as our expenses that you'll see on the next slide. And so there's often when we're just talking about our budget, we focus on the general fund. It's where we have the most control over how we spend our dollars. Food service and community service are based on those programs and must be spent on those. And our debt service, as well as our OPEB debt service, are based strictly on principal and interest payments. So there's not anything that we do differently with those. We set that based on those scheduled payments. So with that, we will focus on the general fund more in just a minute, but you can see on the expenditure side, the same thing. Our general fund is by far the largest part in that one as well. So as we focus on our general fund and the revenues, you can see that state aids make up the largest portion, and levy comes in second to that. So levy makes up 15% of our general fund budget, and it's the same for state has been this, I should say, same as last year, was also 15%. State makes up 79%, also the same as last year. So those two have not changed from 2023-24 to 2024-25. The percentages stay the same. Interest and federal have tweaked a little bit as far as percentages, but 1% going back and forth between the two. So consistently, we've been right around that kind of 15 and 79% for levy and aid split. On the expenditure side, you can see the compensation does make up the largest portion of our expenditures. We are a very employee-heavy organization with hiring of staff and all the people that work with our students. So with that, you can see on the compensation side that that is, I want to say it's 77%. And so as a part of that, what we have done is added $4 million from our purchase services into compensation. That amount reflects what we believe is approximately what we would be paying if we hired our own bus drivers. And we do that as a way, just on this graph, not in budget or how we actually report, but just to kind of show where we would land compared to other districts that maybe do their own internal busing. Many districts land between that 72 and 82% for compensation, and most of that will hinge on whether or not you do a lot of those services in-house or through contractors. So with that, our budget review process, I mentioned that we are planning to come to the school board likely in January with the revision. So once the budget's adopted in June, we do review it several times internally throughout the year. We keep the school board up to date with those and come back several times to the school board to explain where some of our assumptions might have been a little bit off, usually based on enrollment. Maybe federal dollars have changed that we were allocated. So then given those new assumptions, we bring a revised budget to the school board for approval during the year. So that is something that we will be doing in the next month or two. So that's just a really quick review of our budget, and then we'll kind of get into the property taxes. So on that, initially before we even get to the part that we take part in on the levy calendar is the county sending out the proposed values for homeowners and property owners. So they do that right away in the spring. That gives people the ability to appeal that if they believe their property value is not accurately reflected. So from a school district perspective, we had the summer of 2024. We were collecting data internally to submit to the Department of Education. In September, the school board approved our preliminary property tax levy, and we submitted that to the county and to the Department of Education. In November then is when the preliminary tax amounts were mailed out by the county to our property owners. And then tonight is our final approval by the school board. So what gets approved tonight reflects taxes that will be payable during the 2025 calendar year. And for the school district, we will count as revenue in the 25-26 school year. So what happens tonight from a levy standpoint will be a part of the approved budget for the school board in June. So how components are calculated on this levy? Like I said, there's a 40-page document for how all of this is done. And with that, the levy formulas are set by legislature. So those aren't something, every district uses those same formulas in order to come up with that. Each component and we'll walk through the components in this on the next couple slides. Each component has its own formula. And each of those formulas could be calculated on one or a combination of the number of students that we serve, actual expenditures that we expect to incur, and property values. They fluctuate year to year based on property values, so how individual homeowners see that will look different. The amount that we receive might look a little bit different, even though the formulas are the same. The amount that we see that comes in from the state versus levy could change. And we'll talk about equalization a little bit here on some of the next slides as well, because that is something that has impacted our taxes this year. So as we look at our total property tax levy for the school district, this includes all funds. So general fund, community service, debt, and again, our other post-employment benefit debt service. It shows last year's final levy as well as our proposed 2025. So with that, you can see it's a 2.43% increase. And then on the next couple of slides, we'll go through each of these individually. So general fund. With that one, you can see this has a lot more components that are individually calculated. So with that, you can see ranges from some that have gone down, some that have gone up. The percentage change in those. So I'm going to focus on a couple of the larger changes. First, I want to highlight the 3 that have an asterisk next to them. Those are the ones that the district currently gets equalization aid on. So what that is as a school district, if our property values per student are lower than the state set average or don't hit a specific denominator, we get a portion of our tax levy is substituted with state aid. So while we don't get an increase in revenue, it takes a little bit of the tax burden off of our property taxpayers, and the state fills in that amount instead. So many years those denominators don't change. And so what I would actually expect is that for next year, local option will drop off of this and will no longer be equalized, meaning the full amount will be paid by property owners in the district, and the state will not be kicking in a portion in addition to that unless they change the formula. This from last year to this year, in just that one category, we went from 55,000 subsidized by the state to 3. So I'm anticipating that that goes away next year, which would still leave operating and long-term facilities where we would still be getting aid on those. Say that again. I'm trying to remember. I know I looked at the local option one because that's the one that I saw going down. One is 700,000. I think they're both about 700,000. So with that, it does help quite a bit. I don't see those changing significantly going into next year. So again, with those changes, we're just going to hit on the ones that change the mostly from a dollar standpoint, just because some of those change a lot percentage-wise, but might only reflect $20,000. So the biggest changes were in our capital projects referendum. That is our only levy that is based on values. So it's the only one where we take a percentage times the property values in the district. And because the values went up, that meant that our capital projects referendum went up as well. And then on the next one, I said the increases to local option, operating capital, and long-term facilities were entirely due to the switch from the state picking up a portion and having it moved to Texas. Another of those changes that are a little more significant year to year, and this is something that doesn't change much year over year, are the adjustments and the abatements. So adjustments are levies that come into play because we are doing this 7 months ahead of the start of the school year for which the revenue will come in for. So there's a lot of assumptions in that, the biggest one being the number of students that we expect to serve. So if once next year is finalized, which is about 2 years from now, those assumptions are off. We either serve more or less students. I mean, we would see adjustments to the property tax levy based on that. So they basically true it up after the year 2025-6 will end, true it up and make adjustments to levies on that so that we actually get the revenue based on the students we served as opposed to what we projected. So those are the adjustments. On the abatements, abatements reflect for somebody who has appealed their property value. If they win that appeal, what has already happened is the county has spread our property taxes across the district. It's not a percentage on your property. It is, we get this amount because it's what our levy is. And then it is spread to homeowners based on their values as a percentage of the total in the district. So if one person appeals theirs and gets it reduced, the county will collect less, based on that property. So we will receive less in cash. Then the following year, what they do is they take that amount, add it back in, and respread it as a part of the next year's levy. So we don't actually lose the revenue, we just don't get the cash in that year, but they will take that amount and respread it the following year on top of that year's levy. So those are adjustments and abatements, and you'll see those on each of these funds. So on the community service, you can see on this one, in total, it increased 10%. A lot of that is our school age care. That is based on just programming expenses for that. And then also the changes to adjustments and abatements. In total, the dollar amounts are relatively small. And on the debt service fund, again, you can see it's the principal and interest payments for our debt, as well as the adjustments and abatements. Adjustments tend to be higher on this one because we are required to levy 105% of the principal and interest. Then as we've collected it and they made sure we had the cash on hand, barring any appeals, they basically take it based on the calculation and amount off the next year as an adjustment. This one you can see went up in total about 184,000. The principal and interest by 272,000. You'll see a little bit of an offset of that on the next slide. So with that, we have our other post-employment benefit debt, and you can see this one is now gone. So we will be paying off that final payment this February. So with that, we are not levying for that one next year. And so where you can see is now this one went down, where the other one went up. When we issue debt, a new debt, we often look at our existing debt and try to smooth out the principal and interest payment. So as one falls off, we might be increasing the amount that we're making in a principal payment as we've scheduled a new one to go. So with that, it just kind of keeps the property taxes more smooth and even across all of those years instead of this one dropped off and this one went on. So it's kind of a way of people not seeing their taxes go up and down as much. So market value changes over time. You can see in the last 20 years what has happened district-wide in our market values. So currently we are at 5.6 billion, which is an increase of 4 billion over last year. So, no, that is all property owners within the district, so property parcels. And you can see where that did go down for a couple years and has come back up over the last few years as well. And then applying for tax relief. If anybody believes they might qualify for some help in paying their property taxes, Minnesota has 3 programs to assist with that. A property tax circuit breaker refund, special property tax refund, and a senior citizen property tax deferral. So it's not a reduction, but it does allow you to push it back and spread it out over additional years. Some of those are based on age for senior citizens, some are based on income, and some are based on, there might be an increase in your taxes above a certain level. So with that, we really do recommend people talk to their tax professional to find out what they might qualify for. So lastly, we just want to make sure that our public knows we do everything we can to keep those property values we said not only steady, but also as low as we can. In the past, the district has taken advantage of under levying, meaning the levy is the cap that we can go to. We do have the ability to under levy in any of the categories. Usually though, that will come at the expense of losing state aid that's tied to it. There are a couple that does not occur on, and we have done that a few times over the years, on years where we have maybe seen a larger increase than we wanted to see. So, along with that, bond refunding, you can see since 2010, we have refunded bonds of over $13 million. So with that, you can see the amounts for each of those bond issuances. What that did was when a bond is refunded, it's similar to refinancing your home mortgage, in that interest rates when you issued the bond were higher than where they currently stand. And so if you do refund that, refinance, you can get lower rates, and it reduces the principal and interest payments for the future. So those amounts that are reflected there are the amounts that came off of future tax levies. Those are amounts that go directly back to the taxpayers. Those are not amounts that the district keeps. We reduce our levy by the amount of that refunding savings. So with that, we do review for refunding opportunities twice a year. Ellers, our financial advisor, sends us something at least twice a year, just kind of letting us know, here's where rates are at, here's where the market's at, here are bonds that you might have eligible to refund. And so we look at those quite often. Now with that, we do need to open this up for public comment, if anybody would like to speak to it. So, with that, if the board has any questions, or,
We're open it to the board for discussion. Any questions?
I'll say this, I know this is an action item
This-
later in the meeting, but the board will be asked to approve this.
Right. And we've seen all the information in previous work sessions and meetings. Nothing else for the board? All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Ms. Amy Schultz and Mr. Aaron Nielsen. Did I say that correct?
Yes.
All right.
So because December, we like to talk a lot of finances, we're gonna go back to back now. So as you mentioned, we have Aaron Nielsen, he's one of our he's the partner on our school district audit. So he is with the firm Malloy, Montague, Karnowski, Radosevich, who specializes this portion of their firm in auditing government clients. They've been our auditors for a number of years. So he's gonna walk through all 200 or 300 pages of the audit. A really quick slide summary, so please ask any questions that you want. With that, our audit always goes really well. We really appreciate the knowledge that MNKR brings to our audit. But I really want to say thank you to like Chris McGee, who's our controller, who really does the audit. I step in and do a couple sections, but he really is the one behind putting it together and pulling all the data. As well as everybody that you see sitting in the audience today helps as well too, with different portions of it. So we need help from all of them in order to get everything pulled in together. So thanks to everybody for their support and always working with us when we need that. So with that, I'm gonna let Aaron present it, and if there's any questions when he's done, we'll be happy to answer them.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It is nice to do it on the Truth and Taxation evening because you get a lot of the lead in beforehand. So, which allows me to move through it a little quicker, and I'll just hit some highlights with the slides that I have here. So you're already looking forward with your levy. I'm going to take you backwards to the past year for the year ended June 30th, 2024. We have completed our audit for that period and are happy to go through the results of that audit. So with that, I'll get right to it with, our portion of the show with the opinions we issue. For the district's financial audit, we have issued what is known as an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. So exactly what you're looking for, that your financial statements are fairly presented as of June 30th and the results of operations for that year ended. With regard to internal control and compliance for the financial audit, that's a requirement under government auditing standards required by Minnesota statutes and due to the single audit, which is your federal awards audit. And we're pleased to report we have no material weaknesses or instances of non-compliance to share with you this evening. And a couple more areas that we discuss and talk about. The top slide is the top half of the slide is the Minnesota legal compliance audit. So there's 7 broad areas that are tested with regard to the legal compliance audit and many questions within inside of each of those areas. And we had just one comment in all of the areas combined. So our one finding this past year was with regard to group insurance contracts for group insurance over 25 people, and they're required to be limited to a 5-year period before you rebid it. In this case, it was on only one contract. I believe it's probably your smallest group contract for long-term disability. I believe the district had a rate guarantee for this past year, and so they're looking with that process for the next year. But just to make you aware, it is subject to the state requirement for every 5 years for that testing. Moving on to the kind of the broader testing, the more in-depth dive into single audit and federal awards. So a major portion of our audit is the federal audit, which is interesting because it does not make up a very big portion of your financial statement revenues. But we are pleased to report that we had a clean opinion on we say CFA, but it's the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And we had no material weaknesses in the internal controls over that testing that was required for those federal awards. We we talk about your students and the resulting pupil units, so adjusted ADM or average daily membership is a closer look at about the student counts. The pupil unit applies a weighting system to it as you're paid more dollars for your high school students compared to the elementary students and kindergarten students. As you can see, you've had a pretty stable run of enrollment here for a while, the last few years, and just the last couple where it's ticked down a little bit. For this past audit year, there was a decrease in that ADM of just 12 students, or the 12 ADM or adjusted ADM. Now I'm getting to that part where some of these slides are going to look similar to what you've just seen in the last presentation, but we show your financial position over a 10-year period. We grab some key indicators of expenditures, unrestricted fund balance, and cash and investments. The note I made that I wanted to share tonight is, as you can see, your district has done a good job of presenting a steady financial position over this period, adapting to as the size of the operation has grown. You've been able to maintain your cash and investments at a similar pace, increasing to meet the demands of cash flow and so on over that period. A little deeper dive into the general fund, looking at the equity components. You get that breakdown of your fund balance for the general fund. As you can see, again, slight improvement over the prior year when we look at the fund balance position at the end of the year. Some shifts between in the unrestricted, it was a slight increase. You can see there was a slight decrease in unassigned fund balance. And that's really because some of those unassigned dollars have been now targeted for specific projects or assigned for purposes within the district. You can see there was an increase in restricted fund balances, and when I looked into that a little bit this afternoon in preparing for the meeting, largely in basic skills funding and long-term facilities maintenance. So state dollars you receive that are subject to be spent in a particular manner. So tracking that, and you'll utilize those appropriately moving forward. And I should say you've continued to meet your fund balance policy, as I've always been able to report for you in several years now. Looking at the general fund revenue, so a little different graph with a bar graph versus that pie graph you saw in the last presentation. General fund revenues this past year made total $94.2 million, and they came in slightly over budget, or as a conservative accountant we say favorably for you, coming in better than anticipated, but within 1%, or is within 0.7%, so coming in very close in all the categories for the general fund revenue. Again, agreeing with the comments in the last presentation, you can see the state sources making up a majority of the revenues this past year. 75 or almost 76% in state sources, 14% in property taxes. I'll just throw it out there because we talked about your federal single audit, but you can see in the general fund, your federal awards only made up about 5.6% of the dollars for you. A similar graph on the expenditure side of things. We're focusing in on the object categories, or the compensation, salaries and benefits for your employees of the general fund. You can see the need in personnel services to educate your students, and quite common with what we see with the districts we work with. Salary and benefits making up 75.9% or 76% of your spending this past year. Your total expenditures this past year were $86.8 million, and coming in within the appropriations you approved, coming in under budget about 2.1%. So with that, I'll move on to a couple of your operating funds. So the general fund is by far your largest individual primary operating fund of the district. We've got your other operating funds of the food service and the community service fund. I'm simply showing your year-end fund balance of those, largely due just to the change in the size of the operation. Expenditures in each of these funds, coincidentally, is $4.4 million for each one of these operations. You can see the food service fund has done a good job and is in a healthy financial position at year end, again increasing fund balance, equaling about 31.5% of expenditures for this past year. The community service fund, as you can see, has really run pretty lean in fund balance for many years, and using the resources that are available to you, putting it into early childhood programming and many other reasons. But you can see there was a decrease in that fund balance from 130,000 to just over 9,000, totaling about 0.2% of expenses for this past year. And then my last slide that I've included tonight, and I'll let you run any questions by in any of the documents, but the internal service funds. So your district is utilizing the internal service funds for your self-insured benefits of health and dental for employees of the district. I really didn't have a whole lot to add to the slide here that you can see. I mean, probably a common comment you know you're dealing with is the rising costs of claims that we're all enduring of our own businesses, and you're no different than that. You can see that increase there. The increases in charges for services, trying to offset that. But you can even see the improved investment earnings weren't enough to offset that growth that we're seeing. But you do have a healthy fund balance there, but it is important to make sure you manage it because it, changes pretty quickly. So with that, I too want to thank your staff for being well prepared when we come out. It's very important. Stole my positive note at the end of the last slide, your refunding transaction in the debt service fund. So, doing those things to save taxpayer dollars for the district. But we do appreciate the efficiency to be able to go through the audit in that fashion. And I realize it's a boring presentation, the audit presentation, but that's what you're looking for. If it's exciting and I'm up here, it's not a fun one to deliver.
True. Exactly. Board, any questions?
Just a comment if I can. Thank you for being here. And, as a governance board, we have complete faith in Amy and her team, and we get to hear a lot about what a great job they do. But I think it's always great for the public too, to just have someone else come in here as a objective third party and reiterate to everybody what we know, that how well our district is run and how hard we're working to be responsible managers of our fiscal material, of our money.
Financial resources?
Thank you, yes. Anyway, thank you for being here, and thank you to Amy and her team for doing such a great job.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. It's nice to do your presentation. There's no surprises when I'm sharing. I'm not the first one sharing it with you, so it allows me to go through it pretty quickly.
Yeah,
for
that's
you,
great,
so.
thank you.
I just have one quick question. I think it's back on slide 2. It's more of a confirming question.
Mhm.
I think it's around the CFA, if I said that correctly.
Mhm.
Does that include the COVID
Mhm.
dollars that were provided to the district also?
Yes, it would, the federal COVID dollars
Correct.
would be included in that audit there. I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
sure if you have any carryover left anymore. We're running out now that
Yeah.
most of our districts have utilized all of them or a little bit for into next year.
Oh, okay. No, I think it's great that there were no findings there, because the amount of, just from what Amy has shared with us as a board, the amount of rules and strings tied to it, the way she and her team have managed those dollars, I'm absolutely impressed that there's no findings. I mean, I wouldn't expect any anyway, just how she operates and how we operate as a organization. But I'm just extremely impressed that we came out clean.
Yeah, your district's always, for a long time now, have done a great job of being very good stewards and responsible with that fiduciary responsibility. Sometimes there's concerns with those one-time dollars of
Yeah.
what do you do when they're gone? And I feel like you've, from the get-go, how are we gonna plan for that? So you don't hit that fiscal cliff as some places are dealing with.
Right. Yeah. So thank you, Amy. Thank you, Chris McGee
Thank you.
and your team. And thank you, Aaron. This just, to me, again, echoes our district, what we stand for. It's about the kids. And as long as we have that mindset, it transcends in everything we do. And Amy, you and your team do a phenomenal job with our finances. So I can't say enough great things. So thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Moving on to discussion reports and information items. Effective operations, improve our effective management of human, financial, and physical resources. Implement upgraded learning spaces and furniture. District operational plan project update. Ms. Hope Ron.
Yeah, and I think Jeff, you were gonna kick it off here.
I almost forgot I was gonna be doing that. All right, so as you know, the board has heard about this kind of project over the years, a number of times. We began really upgrading our learning spaces with that with the bond that was passed. And process was really interrupted by the pandemic, because what we wanted to do was implement some things and then really see what we were learning, how they were going. For example, Centerview had all the spaces in their school, and we were able to do that. And got a lot of staff really excited to get some new furniture to have more flexibility in their space. And so we've been working on that a lot last spring and throughout this year. I'm really excited to move forward with that. So that's what Hope and we are here to give you an update on.
All right, well, as the board is well aware, this image shows the core components of our innovative and personalized learning approach in Spring Lake Park schools. And as you also are well aware, all of our efforts in Spring Lake Park start with our learners and learning, and furniture is no exception to that, okay? You can see in the middle of the image the ribbon that weaves through each of the 4 components, and that's centered on designing engaging student work and learning experiences. And again, this holds true for that 4th component or 4th circle of flexible learning environments. We describe this core component briefly as the flexible use of time, space, and resources. And when we talk resources, we talk both human and fiscal resources, again, to enhance student learning. Throughout our work in this project, we've been intentional and purposeful about keeping the students at the center of each conversation. On this slide, you'll see the bullet points of the work that was accomplished as we look back over the past year, the 23-24 school year. And I want to focus my time here, before I turn it back over to Amy, really specifically talking about the work of the design teams that happened last year. So our design teams were comprised primarily of teachers and teacher leaders, and then our school principals joined that as well. Whenever we had a design team in, we always started with some kind of what we call provocation, right? That means maybe it's a reading, maybe it's a video, maybe it's some kind of dialogue or discussion prompt that centered the members of that design team around the work and learning experiences that we want to design in order to prepare our kids for their future, which we all know is rapidly changing, okay? So that was just an important part. Like, we didn't bring design teams together and say, let's look at a bunch of furniture. We brought the design teams together and said, let's talk about learning and let's talk about our learners. And that's where you see those other core components come in, our learner profiles. Who are our kids? What does that mean for what we're designing? The design teams also got some inspiration from Centerview. Jeff, in his intro, unknowingly, set me up well for that. So as you know, Centerview is our newest building and the building with the most flexible furniture and space with walls that are able to move in and out. But we brought our design teams there. We wanted to give them a chance to see how teachers are teaming together in innovative and different ways in order to group students in ways that really leverage their strengths and their interests and also meet their needs. And our teachers there are not only grouping the kids flexibly, they're also grouping themselves differently to meet those needs of those kids. So after those experiences, our design teams then engaged in a process to determine then finally the type of furniture that would be conducive to the learning environment that we're wanting to create. Our partners at Wold Architects took all of that insight, which was plenty, over a series of meetings, and then designed 3 sets of furniture, which I learned through this process architects call kits, not sets. And then as they did that, we continued to bring those design teams in to get feedback all along the way. So as we ended up 23-24, we had kits of furniture, multiple kits that we thought would be viable options for each grade band. And another piece I think that's important, when you see those 4 components weave together, the grade bands that the furniture was designed around align with our competency grade bands. So our academic competencies span K2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the furniture kind of followed along with that, just kind of showing the integration of all that work together. So now I will turn it over to Amy for looking at what has happened this year so far. And before I do that, I know she just got a lot of kudos for all the financial stuff. And I just have to say, as a partner in this work with her, it's been really amazing to see her take a leadership with the design teams and the principals and the architects, and seeing Amy keep learning and our learners at the center. And I do not think that happens in many other places. So I just have a ton of appreciation for the partnership that we have. When I'm gone, I have no doubts that she is continuing that conversation and keeping our kids at the forefront. So thank you. Just if I'm out for a day, that's all.
Okay, I won't talk budget and numbers, I promise. But this really was fun, and it's amazing to be able to work with Hope and with Wold, to watch them lead these design teams, with just the different, provocations and protocols that were used. So for example, having everybody, all the design teams say, like, I want so that I can. And it might be, I want room to be able to move around so I can get my wiggles out. So like when we're talking about some of our learners, and so those were all those types of prompts that Wold took, and she said they were a lot of them. So when they came back with these initial kits, as they had them, that kind of got us through 2024. So as we've started this current school year, we this summer kind of reconvened all those design teams again and reviewed those kits. So Wold came in, we were at the high school, and what they did, they put them up and they're like, okay, here's one thing, give us feedback. And so people were great about that, saying, okay, we like that, we don't like that, we don't think this will work, what about this? So they again took all of that feedback and went back and redesigned those. So at that point, then they came back to our principals, and maybe a smaller group within the high school of just our leaders to really finalize them. And so at that point, we came up with 3 kits. And so with that, we now have 3 options. So there's 3 separate kits for each set of grade bands. So what that means, and you'll see these on pictures as we go through this, there's a kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3 options. So as they look at those, you'll see option, make sure I get this right. Option 1 has tables, a combination, tables, koi desks, and soft furniture. Option 2 on those has mostly some of the koi desks, you'll see what those are, with a couple soft seating. And option 3 has tables and some soft seating. So with those, you'll see for kindergarten 2, we'll show you option 2. And for the next grade band, we'll show you a different option, just so you can kind of see how the different layouts of furniture look. And then with that, as we see those, you'll see kind of there's some options even within each one. So we went through all of those initially, and Wold came out with big maps, sat down with the teams and said, okay, every classroom, tell me which kit you want in every classroom. So they're writing them down on there, and then with that, we also met with all of our, when we think of our regular classroom staffing, we also have a lot of staff that work with our students in different ways. So that might be our occupational therapist, speech. So we also looked at each of their spaces. And while we didn't necessarily say you have to use this kit, it started with our kits, and then we modified those based on what the student needs within each of those groups would be. So often it would say, well, we want a modified kit 2 for 8 students instead of 25, but we want to swap out a couple seats, or we need more storage, less storage. So within each of those, we really did design it back to what the learning that would happen in those spaces, as opposed to here's your furniture, make it work. It really did come back to focusing on the learning that we wanted and the experiences we wanted students to have. So again, Wold Architect worked through all of that. So they have now gotten all of those details. They are now in the process then of going back and putting that in a final to bring back to us to review. So with that, I said I'll show you a couple different options. I'm not sure how easy this is going to be to see, but on this one you can see of the 3 options, you have option 2, and it's for kindergarten and 1st and 2nd grade. Kindergarten, because kindergarten furniture is going to be a little smaller than the 1st and 2nd grade furniture, but the kit will look the same. It will just be slightly different sizes. there can be different sizes on the tables. So as we do that, we might, in the end, say we want a couple tables in kindergarten that are literally this far off the ground with a couple pads for students to sit on, if that's one of those variations they come back with in the end, with the final look. In some of our grade levels, you'll see sit-to-stand desks, might also be an option. So within those, you can see the combinations. So this one was the Koi desks. So those are the desks that kind of fit together. They're individual student desks on wheels. Chairs are also on wheels, very easy to move around. So you can switch between teams. You can push them to side if you need to get your wiggles out. So with that, you can see then some storage components and a couple different pieces of furniture. So with those different seating options, you can see we have some kind of buoy seats and hockey stools. Those kind of let kids move around a little bit while still staying in their spot, as well as in the chairs. We have some softer chairs, the stair seating, and then you can see the square on there. That's actually big enough for somebody to just crawl in and sit in it. So we have very different seating like that, so students have some choice in how, like what they're sitting on while they're there. And one of the things we also want to point out is when we're looking at these, this is one kit. This is how it will be installed this summer when it gets delivered. And then when school starts, it's really up to the staff and how they are partnering, working with kids, and they can move that furniture around any way they want that best fits the learning for that time of the day. So it can move around within the day, at the beginning, end of the day, but they have that flexibility. And it's also, teachers aren't going to own those classrooms in the same way. Teachers might move while the furniture stays there. So there's just different ways that this flexibility with it will allow the teachers to do that. So option 3, this is one where we said it's more tables and soft seating. You don't see the Koi desks in there. So it's just another option. This is for grades 3 through 6. So you can see it's a lot of that same furniture. This one does have some of that sit-to-stand desks, so there might be a table or two within the classroom that kids who want to be able to stand up have that ability as well. This is obviously one layout, and once that furniture is delivered, it's really up to the staff on how they want to use it. And then I will show option 1. So this is the one where we said it's more of the Koi individual desks, as well as soft seating. So with that, again, you can see this one has sort of a lot more individual seating options and different ones within it. Again, especially as we get to those levels, I think we have a lot of kids that have different preferences on, some are high tops, some are regular height tables, some are soft seating, so you'll see just all of those within classrooms. And again, when we sat down with the principals, and Hope was great with this too, as they would lay it out, it would be, okay, well, we might have heard, well, we want all of first grade to have option 1. And it's like, okay, tell us why. And so it's like with that, in the end, we don't have a single grade level where the entire grade level has the same option. So it really does give that flexibility back to teachers even within that grade band working together, so.
What does Koi mean?
Koi is just the name of the individual desk, so there's nothing specific to it. With the one we're looking at now, you can see very few of them. There's 4 of them in here. I'm gonna go, okay, at top left, there's a red table in that. So it's an individual chair, or table, and with those, you'll be able to see like they kind of connect together easily. So you can group kids well, they can pull apart and work individually, or you can group them together. So one of the things as we went through this process, just to kind of show how the flexibility can be different, the kidney tables, a long staple in elementary education, and there's going to be some feelings of loss. One kit of the 3 between grades K through 2 has a kidney table in it. But if you string 4 or 5 of those Koi desks together, because they can kind of fit together, you just put them in a U shape and it works the same way. And that way you can do it with 3 students, 4 students, but I mean, you still have that same functionality, now with the ability to pull those apart and work differently. So that's where the Koi desks there's a lot of those at Centerview. When you're walking around there, you would see those. And so they group together well, and they pull apart and work individually well.
Particularly at 7-12 with getting those Koi desks is that walking around at grade 7 and 8 right now, and they've got what are called sleigh desks where the chair is actually attached to the desk and they're super heavy, which leads to teachers who are wanting to do something different as they're designing the learning. It makes it very difficult during the class period to move those around. There's not a lot of flexibility with the design, how they group kids. Whereas if like you walk through the classrooms that have these koi desks, the teacher will just, even with first and second graders at Centerview, they tell them, move the desks, and the kids just boom, and it's in less than a minute, they've got kind of the classroom redesigned, so.
All right, so those are, I say, we showed an option 1, 2, and 3, so with that, you can see those are just one option within each of those grade bands. So right now, if you were to look at the giant map that Wold has, you can see each classroom and a bunch of furniture all over the place. So, like I said, right now, they're putting together, finalizing it, going back and forth with manufacturers to make sure things are still being, like, the pictures that you see here could look slightly different depending on the manufacturer and what's gonna be available. So, but with that, they're putting all that together right now for one final look.
If you're getting to this, forgive me, I can wait. I'm just wondering about, so is this, which buildings is this going in? Who's getting this furniture? Like, what's the scope here?
All of them but Centerview.
Everybody sits down, okay.
Yeah, so Centerview
awesome.
was an enormous help in going through this
Yes.
process and kind of really showing staff who maybe were a little apprehensive,
Yeah,
this can be done.
right.
Where all but one teacher in Centerview switched classrooms between last year and this year. Like, they kind of model that flexibility in owning, the building as opposed to the classroom. So, and just the ability to move around and show that kids, yes, elementary kids, can work independently and can work in groups, and so
And
they
is-
aren't, but the rest of our buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, like, there are places that, in the C building at the high school, where we had in the science wing, they've received a lot of the new furniture there as recently as the 2016 bond, so it's not necessarily school-wide, because they do have that in some places, but those parts of the school where they didn't have it, they're gonna be getting that furniture.
And I would
So-
imagine when you were saying how there's not a single grade in any school that was like, we're all getting option 1.
Yep.
I imagine part of that is because they're planning as a group, right? Like, for some activities, this option would be better, and for some things we do, this option would be better, but they're more of a community spaces almost that can be interchanged. That's kind of the idea, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the question that we ask our teachers to think about all the time is, first, what's the type of learning that's happening? And then second, what space is most conducive to
Right.
that? And so that, having that mix gives flexibility for within a team or a pod or whatever it's called at all the different schools, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, here's the kind of learning I'm doing at this time. This space is most conducive.
Right.
Let me run over here and do that. So yeah, they're working much more collaboratively and
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I
interdependently.
love the collaboration of that,
Mhm.
that's great, and positions us so well. Like you said, like a teacher might go to a different classroom next year and just positions the whole grade well for the future, so, awesome, thanks.
I think I have a question is, and again, if it's coming, let me know. Cause I think the desks that are currently in the high school are literally the desks that I had sat in back in the day, so it's pretty exciting to see the options that are here. And I also think it's interesting how, like, the 3rd to 6th grade map is more fixed. I think it had less koi,
Yep, and I said
tables.
That's because I only showed one option at each grade band. So
Yeah.
every grade band has a 1, a 2, and a 3.
I
So I
see
just
what you're
used,
saying
I
now.
picked 3 so we
You're
didn't go
just-
through 9 of them.
Got
but-
it.
So otherwise, they're very similar. That's why I said 1 is koi table and soft, 1 is more tables and soft, and 1 is a combination of the 3. So-
And I'm curious what, like, the recycling of the old equipment, or do we sell that, or how does that somehow not?
Yeah, right now we're looking into some options on how we would do that. If we're gonna try to sell it ourselves, if there's a company out there that would just buy stuff from us and sell it, and some of it is just old. Like, most of it,
Retired.
we will try to sell whatever we can.
Yeah.
And we're trying to salvage whatever we can, so we've also done an inventory, and there are bookshelves we can keep, there are some of the soft seating we've already purchased, we're gonna keep. So first we were saying this is what we want, now we currently have an inventory, and that's what Wold is also working through right now, is here's what we need, they're gonna back those off the order for what we already have on site, we don't need to get rid of. But right, and we have a couple schools where almost every classroom is getting touched, other than potentially music, where our teacher said we don't really sit, so we don't need seats all over the room, so a few of those, but I mean, when you look at Park Terrace and Woodcrest, most every classroom is getting new furniture. a lot of Westwood, so the new STEM area doesn't need it, but the rest of the building, the high school, it's the C wing. A few classes within it are getting it, but otherwise it's the rest of the building. So.
How long do we anticipate that all this furniture will last?
It depends on the piece of furniture, I will be honest. Some of them will last a long time. The soft seating doesn't have as long of a useful life. What we have been doing at the high school, some of the furniture that was purchased 10 years ago, is we've started reupholstering it. So as opposed to getting rid of it and buying it new, we've started to reupholster some of those things. And we believe that some of the fabrics that we're using now will hold up better as well. So some of that stuff from the very first round, when it was really new to schools, we've learned some things. So we know which vendors we do and don't want to work with and what types of fabrics to go with. So with that, I mentioned I just want to go through some next steps. Oh, I didn't get to this one. This is just another picture of some of the furniture. So the board can look through that. Just different storage options, different seating options, so different soft seating and different tables. So next steps in timeline, like I said, they're putting together all that information right now. So then once we have a chance to review it and say, yep, this is what we all agreed to, then at that point they will go back and finalize the order and submit it to the vendors. So we want that in place by February 1st. About that same time, we'll try to get out like a kind of a communication push with our staff too. One, we want to make sure that they're excited about this, that they know there's going to be support when it comes through. And kind of then what those expectations are. So we'll work through all of that, but we do want our students and our staff and our families to be excited about it. So right now we are hoping to have it all delivered and installed by June. So that is the plan. Right now, Wold is telling us that is doable, and so that is what we are planning for. We are also continuing to go through, this isn't gonna hit every space, like we haven't talked about cafeteria spaces. Our Park Terrace has their hallways where they have the pods. They've expressed some interest in maybe changing that out a little bit, as well as some of the locker bays at the high school. So there's other spaces where people have expressed interest in changing them. So we wanted to get through this part first. Like, this is kind of the really big push. Once this part's done, we'll start to review some of those other spaces and see what we can do in those as well. So with that, then that is what we have. But if there are any other questions?
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you for the pictures.
Yeah,
You know
Amy?
how we're very detail oriented, so it's so helpful to be able to see them. So thank you for the examples.
Yes, Amy was very excited to see the pictures.
I hope there's pictures.
I want to know, will we have an opportunity to test out the furniture at a work session?
Not until next Tuesday.
Just
We
thought I'd-
do, we can go to Centerview. They have a lot of it now.
Oh, that's-
It's
that's
not
true.
adult size for most of it, but
We could have a work session.
I think we did do a work
High school
session.
space. We did do that at a work session.
Yeah, we did a
years
work
ago.
session there.
With like at the science wing.
Oh, yeah.
high school, had
We
the
did one at
science wing.
Centerview too.
We
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
use
that's
Centerview.
true.
We did.
Overlooking the playground.
Well, I hope the teachers and students are excited because obviously the board is really excited about new furniture at the schools. So this is great. Thank you very
Our
much.
two board reps are really excited. So they won't be here.
Yeah, you're late.
Right.
You're welcome to come back and try it out.
It sounds exciting, but it sounds like a big pile of work, so thank you.
Yes, exactly. All right. It is. It's Ain't the Amy Show. All right.
This is our really fast one. We're back to
Right.
numbers and budget. Sorry.
Ready to go again?
I'm ready to go again.
Monthly financial report for October 2024. Ms. Amy Shaw.
All right, so treasurer's report, we're gonna do this one quick. This is our monthly cash basis report of receipts and disbursements, beginning and ending cash balances. So, a bigger month on our receipts, a very average month on our disbursements, so we won't go into that. On the receipt side, it's about $3 million in taxes that were received. October and November are our bigger months where we get it's kind of an advance payment, is the way they describe it, but on our taxes for that, just under $4 million in state aid. So a pretty good month for state aid as well. $2.6 million in federal. That's a lot of our budget. October reflected when we closed out the last of our audit entries and we're able to draw down all of our federal allocations from last year. So the rest of those COVID dollars we talked about earlier is also a big chunk of that as well, so, and they are done. So with our other, in addition to those kind of top three amounts that we received, the rest of them are sort of those ongoing, program revenues. On the statement of revenues, this is our cash basis receipts, for the month, year-to-date, our current budget, which is the one adopted in June, and then our, year-to-date is a percentage of that budget, and then compared to this point in October, the past couple of years. General fund, right in line. Food service, we're a little lower than we were the last 2 years. That is because the past 2 years, we were getting supply chain assistance dollars, which was something also from the federal government, where they were, because of COVID and the disruption to the supply chain, we were getting additional dollars for that, because food costs have gone up so much. It had stretched out into this past year, because year over year, it wasn't all getting used, so it kept carrying forward. Now that it is gone, but at that point, we were getting these early in the year. It wasn't a spend it and get reimbursement. It was, here's your money up front. So we're a little behind because of that happening in the previous 2 years. Community education is really right in line. Debt service, you can see the refunding bond makes it look a lot lower. This is the one we've talked to the board about prior. The refunding bond, when we budgeted for it in July, which was the closing date, and when all the money kind of changed hands. When we did the audit, they wanted it booked back to June, which is when it was approved to be done. So the closing time, as opposed to the actual when the money changed hands. So that's why when you, if you go through the detail in the audit, you will see that we had a lot more revenue and expense in fiscal '24. So we will be, this is part of the budget revisions where we will reduce that now because we've already recorded it in the previous year. Statement of expenditures, the report is set up in that same way. Really, general fund is running right in line with where it's been the last 2 years. Within different categories, it might be up and down a little bit, but in total, we're running really right in line. Differences between those categories could just be a matter of, somebody was purchasing more workbooks this year versus supplies this year. So those happen, as well as timing of capital projects. And then for food service, that one is a little bit lower than last year. Last year, we had equipment purchased over the summer. So we had some of those walk-in coolers, things like that. So those in a convection oven. So those were done this past year. That's why that one was higher. And then again, the debt service bond. So that is what I have for the month of October, if there are any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Amy. You did fantastic this evening. You want to do the superintendent report? All right, moving on to superintendent report.
All right, some updates, finance work that Amy and her team are doing. So just some things to highlight you on. First, you can see our Lighthouse students learning some survival skills at the Wargo Nature Center. So for each of these pics, I'll just leave them up for a minute so you get a chance to see them. Also students in our REACH program at Park Terrace recently participated in a poetry slam using their communication devices, and they were able to read their poems aloud to their peers in 4th grade. Pretty cool opportunity for those kids. Woodcrest Spanish Immersion has high schoolers come each week as part of the Panther Buddy program, where they get to work with young kids. And I think you can see, I don't know who has more fun, the buddies at Woodcrest or the buddies from the high school. Okay, this is North Point 4th graders. Created color theory wheels in their art class. I really appreciate Erica and her team help put this together, each of the meetings, and being able to kind of give you a glimpse throughout the district and all the different things happening. I really appreciate how they do that. So this is our Park Terrace 1st graders. Plan and created some floats for a parade. We walked through the halls showing off their creations. So. I think our staff member in the lower left might be the most proud of her work. All right. Westwood, they created gratitude trees to remind them of what they are grateful for. So each leaf reflects a gratitude that they had. So this is pretty cool to go over and read some of these. Yeah, it's too bad, that's a poor kid. But, all right. Seventh graders kind of dove into the exciting, fast-paced world of the 1920s, so let's see what they're doing here. OEC, always doing something cool, and this is they shared their expertise over at Westwood, so our Westwood students had the chance to learn with and from some of our OEC students from high school. So that was pretty cool. And then, we had our Shark Tank, was it the semifinals, or I don't know what we called them, last week, and tomorrow is the finals. So, over at the high school, so we had some of our industry partners in serving as judges, and kids pitching their products. So, again, this always amazes me every year, watching these kids get up and then dealing with some of the questions. Industry partners are not real easy on them, so. Trying to advance it, there we go. So our winter issue of our SLP experience is available online. It'll be hitting homes early July. Some amazing stories in there. And when I say July, yeah. And it's gonna take a while. Pony Express, but, so yeah, January, thank you. But, some amazing stories in there. One of the features is, right here from these kids. You can learn more about Avid, and where they tell you more about that. So I encourage people to check that out. Just some reminders, in January 17th, there's no school, it's Professional Learning Day. 20th is a, holiday for kids, so there's no school that day. And then our kindergarten new family information night. So I just met with Colleen and Erica. There's a ton of things that have been happening since summer, getting information out to prospective families to let them know about all the great things happening in Spring Lake Park. And so they can come learn more about that and hopefully choose to be part of our community. So that's it. All right, if there's any questions, happy to take them.
Any questions? Amy likes the pictures.
It's not just me, right?
All right, moving on to action items. Can I get a motion for certification of final 2024 payable 2025 property tax levy? So moved by Hennan, second by Schmidt, to adopt the final 2024 payable 2025 property tax levy and to certify the amounts to the Anoka County Department of Property Tax Administration. General fund, $14,076,268.18. Community services, $551,127.79. And general debt, $11,097,976.48, for a total of $25,725,372.45. And we already had a presentation on that. Any further discussion? Or any more discussion, I should say. All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. And can I get a resolution for establishing combined polling places? So moved by Scully. Was it second by Forsberg? To adopt the following resolution, it's kind of a long resolution. I'll try and speed through it quickly. Be resolved by the School Board of Spring Lake Park Independent School District Number 16, State of Minnesota, as follows. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 205A.11, the precinct and polling places for school district elections are those precincts or part of precincts located within the boundaries of the school district, which have been established by the cities or towns located in whole or in part within the school district. The board hereby confirms those precincts and polling places so established by those municipalities. Pursuant to Minnesota statute section 205A.11, the board may establish a combined polling place comprised of several municipal precincts for school elections not held on the day of the statewide election. The combined polling places are to be established annually prior to December 31st to serve the precincts specified for all school district special and general elections not held on the same day as a statewide election. Each combined polling place must be a polling place that has been designated by a county or municipality. Those combined polling places are listed below. Precinct 1 encompasses all territories in Spring Lake Park, ISD number 16, located in the cities of Fridley and Spring Lake Park. Precinct 2 encompasses all territory in Spring Lake Park, ISD 16, located in the city of Blaine. Pursuant to Minnesota statute section 205A.11, the following polling places are hereby designated for said combined precincts for all special and general elections not held on the same day as a statewide election. Precinct 1, Grace Evangelical Free Church, and Precinct 2, and that's in Fridley, and Precinct 2 is the National Sports Center, the Welcome Center in Blaine, Minnesota. Pursuant to the Minnesota statute, section 205.09, the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. The clerk shall also file a certified copy of this resolution with said county auditor. All right. Any discussion?
This sounds great to me. I just want, where it says the combined polling places are to be established annually, wasn't there a law passed that we only have to do this if there's a change? Which we do have a change, so this is completely appropriate, but is that right, Yvonne? Okay, so each year, we used to do this every year, but I think now we only have to do it when we change a polling place. Okay,
I believe so.
I was just clarifying.
Thank you, Paul. Other?
So that we,
Grace Evangelical
Yeah,
is
instead of
now the
Woodcrest.
polling place.
used to be Westwood, because
Used
it's
to
at a
be
school.
Woodcrest, yeah.
It's a non-school spot.
Other questions?
To clarify though, in general election years, Woodcrest will still have to be a site. City of Fridley does not have, enough other options that Woodcrest, they still will designate Woodcrest a site on the even years, so.
All right. Thank you to Grace Evangelical Free for being a polling place. All right. Any other discussion? Clerk, would you please call roll?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, clerk. Oh, Marilyn, don't forget to turn your mic on. Thank you. All right, moving to acknowledgement of gifts. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Villela,
Second.
second by McCullen, to approve the following resolution. Whereas School Board Policy 706 establishes guidelines for the acceptance of gifts to the district, and whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 states that a school board may accept a gift of real or personal property by the adoption of a resolution approved by 2/3 of its members. Therefore, be it resolved that the school board of Spring Lake Park Schools accepts with appreciation the gifts as shown. And we have the gifts shown on the screen.
Wow, that's a large
Discussion?
gift from Hy-Vee.
Yeah.
Holy Hannah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you to everyone. This is, yeah, this is great. Awesome. Other discussion? Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Gilling,
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg, yes. Ms. McClellan,
Yes.
Mr. Valella,
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt,
Yes.
Ms. Hennon,
Yes.
Mr. Easter.
Yes,
That resolution also is adopted on a 7-0 vote.
thank you. All right, moving on to board forum, we'll start with our student reps. How are we this evening?
Good, I think. I mean, a little cold, but other than that, good.
Yeah.
So, everything at the high school's been going pretty good. I mean, we've come back, we're almost at 3 weeks, so it would seem like we haven't had that much going on, but We had our blood drive the first week back. We had 42 sign up, which was our limit. Unfortunately, we had a few who were turned away due to medical reasons or whatever it may be. So we did only have 27 donate, which was our goal. So, and each of those 27 saved 3 lives, which is awesome. Boys hockey partnered with Hope for Youth Family and raised $700 to then go to Target and buy gifts for the family. If you want to see more about that, you can find it on their Instagram page and see photos of these teenage boys going through Target with their Starbucks in their hand, picking out toddler clothes and games and splitting off into groups. And they then brought those gifts and personally donated them, which is awesome. NHS just had their tie blanket drive. So they were all personally made by NHS members. And OEC has their Support a Family event this month where they buy gifts, wrap them, and then donate them to families in the community. This is done by OEC students, but also NHS students and any other volunteers in our community. And finally, we had the winter market last weekend, which was amazing to see all these little kids come in to try to find gifts for their families. Sometimes they were looking for gifts for themselves, which you were able to find out as a volunteer, but we tried to push them more in the direction of finding one for their parents or grandparents. But kids will be kids, so it was what it was. And yeah, so that's what's been going on at the high school.
Awesome.
Yeah, and some other clubs have also been really ramping up as winter gets going. We had the math team have a meet yesterday on Monday. And last week, Knowledge Bowl also had a meet, and we host those, and I'm actually a part of it. And so it's really fun because we get like so many different people from other schools, and like I have friends from other schools that I see, and it's just really nice that we have the space to like do that. And we also have winter sports ramping up, basketball games, hockey games. The dance team are having performances, and oh yeah, Nordic skiers were gone today, out skiing, I guess.
Where?
The One Act is also starting up. It's called Girls on a Boat, and it's about like the first Olympic rowing team for women. So I personally know nothing about that, so I'm kind of excited to go see what it's all about. And then finally, in Student Council, last Friday, we just met and started planning for Winter Spirit Week and our dance and everything. And we have our new members now. And so we have a lot of new voices who are trying to find new ways to engage people and get more participation in our Pep Fest and Power Buff, which is boys volleyball. And I'm really hopeful that we're gonna have a great participation for Winter Spirit Week with all the new things we're doing.
That sounds fun. Once again, wish I was back in high school.
No, you don't.
Well, all my teachers, yeah, that's true, I have new furniture. All my teachers would probably say, no. Awesome, thank you for the updates. We'll start on this side with board members. Any updates? Kelly, don't forget to turn your mic. Thanks.
The Nordic team was at Battle Creek today, which is St. Paul. 50 skiers out there, which is really amazing from a participation standpoint. You know, once again, kudos to the activities office and how many ways they tap into students. And I think that is it. I mean, I don't mean to, as I come into the winter break, I can't think of my specific things anywhere. It's like, I know I've been busy, I just can't remember what I've been doing. It's terrible.
Totally understand. Anyone else?
I have a few things. The winter market I went to, it was amazing. The people that put it on and the volunteers all, it was very impressive, and all the vendors, and I did some shopping and it was wonderful. I wanted to comment on some of the superintendent stuff. My daughter is a Panther buddy at Woodcrest, and she absolutely loves it. And she said that the little kids are coming out of their shells. They were very shy at first, but now they're excited to see their friends that They're big friends that come to visit them. And then my son was part of the, OEC stuff at Westwood, and he couldn't stop talking about it for weeks, so I think he might be joining OEC eventually. So that's great. And then last night, there was a choir concert. And I'm always amazed at the talent that all the choirs that the high school offers. And the crowd even got to participate. So I know Colleen was there she could go back to her choir years. I mouth lip synced, or whatever you want to call it. And my daughter saw me. She's in the front center and she said, "Mom, you weren't even singing." But it was really fun. They put on a good show. So I think that's it.
Amy?
I attended the Woodcrest PTO meeting way back on November 18th, so I'm doing my best. No, they always have a good turnout. They talked about their fall fundraiser, which went really well. A bunch of upcoming activities, but it was mentioned, there was a preview of it in the earlier slide. One of their new fun things is they were able to get snowshoes. So all of the kids at Woodcrest sometime this winter will get to try snowshoes, which they were encouraging parents to come in and help, because you can guys imagine just getting them on, and I'm so excited for them, but it will be also a fun opportunity to volunteer, I think, so. That's it.
Awesome. We'll go to this side.
I attended a couple of basketball games, two of the girls, two of the boys, and also a little third grade in-house game. So quite a variety of events as far as skill level and all the things. And so that was really enjoyable. I always like going and watching and recognizing some of the kids and getting to know some of the students and seeing some of the kids that I see on the regular at that too. So the other thing I wanted to just say is listening earlier to all of about our fiscal responsibility, I'm just really proud. I'm very, very proud, and I'm really struck by that, because I've spoken with other friends that are in other districts and things going on and the cuts and turmoil and different things there. I'm just really thankful that all the background stuff that happens, that makes a huge difference in our schools, so that our kids and our teachers aren't feeling that. So thank you, all involved.
Marilyn?
I agree. Financially, we don't want to be in the newspaper.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, I did not attend the Westwood PTA. It was my grandson's 21st birthday that same night as their meeting, so family first. Announcement-wise, Thursday and Friday, January 16 and 17 is the MSBA Annual Leadership Conference at the auditorium. 916 had a retirement, and they're trying to recognize long-term retirees at a board meeting. They don't have a nice spring event like we do to recognize. We approved a Laserfish contract, and we had a very interesting AI policy assistant demonstration. All of their policies have been put into, I'm not very good at talking technology, put into a system, and you can ask the system any question, and it will refer you to all the policies that are related to the question you have asked. And they hope to make that available to districts as well. So maybe pretty soon we can say, I had a child misbehave today, can I suspend him? And you will get an answer with the listing of the policies that would apply. So a very good use and very interesting use of AI. And as you know, I went to Delegate Assembly, Minnesota School Boards Association, 28 resolutions, which were very interesting. Most of them were passed. Some of the interesting discussions were around school districts who need to eliminate their Native American names from their teams. And as it stands now, to retain one of those names, you have to have the approval of every tribe in Minnesota. And so one of the resolutions was to have just the tribes that has students in that district. Unfortunately, that failed on a very, very close vote. But a related resolution to ask the state for monies to pay for it, because for smaller districts, by the time you have to buy new uniforms and everything that's associated with it, sometimes changes to buildings, it's quite expensive. So that had a lot of discussion. The other thing that had a lot of discussion was the last resolution, which had to do with suspending K-2 students, whether there should be some leeway on that, because sometimes, again, smaller districts don't have a lot of options what to do with that student, and they need some time to do it. That did pass, but it was a very, very close vote. So I have my information, and if anyone would like to look at it, I would be happy to loan it to you for a period of time.
But you want it back, right?
Yes, please.
Well, it sounds like it was a very interesting assembly.
Very. More resolutions than usual.
Oh, okay. Can't wait to see what happens with all those.
It is interesting in that there will be a vote at the leadership conference on amending the bylaws to change the number of delegates from each area. And as you know, we are in a very interesting area because we are the only ones that an area and a district are the same, and it happens to be the 6 schools of Anoka County. And the metro area is going to get an increase in delegates. We are going up by 1 from 7 to 8. So there will be more openings next year. So if this is of interest to any of you, be sure to submit some names.
We'll let you pick someone from our board. Thanks, Marilyn. Did you have anything else?
I think that's enough.
All right. So, before we move into closed session, we will, after the closed session, we will be taking action on the 2 items that we will be discussing, around employee negotiations. One is for, the school clerical employees, and the other is for, principal employees. So just so everyone's aware, we will take action after the closed session on, those 2 items. All right? Should we move into closed session? Can I get a motion? So moved by Schmidt, second by Hennan, to enter into closed session to discuss employee negotiations at 8:28. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We are now in closed session.